thank you everybody for getting on the call today for our industry update. I think Eric has already gone through some of the housekeeping, but please remember to keep your lines muted and to use the chat feature only and address the entire, to use everybody when you're adjusting the question. And John and Melissa will answer your questions at the end of this. With that, I'm going to turn this over to John.
Thank you, Hope, and welcome everyone. Glad to have you with us today. As a reminder, today's webinar is for the information and use of our restaurant, hotel, travel and tourism, and other friends and partners of PRLA. It's not designed as a press call. It is off the record. If there are any members of the press on the call right now, feel free to reach out to us directly, but please disconnect at this time. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Melissa. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. I can only assume many of you are calling into the webinar from your cars because you're on your way to Harrisburg right now, or you're with us in spirit. So today is an exciting day. And of course, on the day that we all have a time crunch, it's when we have lots to cover. So let's jump right into it. So federal, the U.S. House is back in session this week. As we know from the elections, the Democrats did maintain control. And this week they are doing leadership elections. All assumptions is that Speaker Pelosi will continue in her position. But of course, they have to go through the motions. And there is, if you've been reading the news, a little bit of drama within the Democratic caucus in the U.S. House as it pertains to some of the more liberal members and some of the more conservative members and how the election shaped up because of those differences. So I think our hope, wishing on a star, was that they would come back and pass a COVID recovery package because that would be the right thing to do. But it does not seem that that's something that's going to be considered this week. To that end, it is something that could be considered over the next few weeks. They do need to balance a budget, and our industry and a lot of industries need a lot of financial help right now. And if they don't do something now, we're probably looking at January for some type of recovery package. And from what we're seeing around the country, in parts of our state like Philadelphia, we're going to need that assistance a heck of a lot sooner than January. So the hope and the pressure, and you'll be hearing from the national associations, is to push the Senate and the House to come together to pass a recovery package, and then hope that current President Trump would sign such a package. Of course, we do anticipate that if that doesn't happen when they return in January, President-elect Biden has said that he will support a recovery package, probably much larger than what would be passed right now. But we do expect something to be done. I think the question and the fear is when it will be done and how many of you can last as long as it will take to get something like that across the finish line. But they are back in session. We will be applying pressure. We are going to be speaking to all of this at the rally at 2 o'clock today, the need for financial assistance. So all of that pressure will hopefully drive some type of action within Washington. There's only so much we can do at the state level. There's not enough funds there. We really need the feds to step in again with a robust recovery package to help the industry. So that's where we are. Federal, like I said, not a lot, but we are past the election, so we are able to look a little bit more to the future. Next slide. Federal election update. There isn't a lot of change here. President Trump has not conceded the election yet. They are still pursuing a number of legal avenues, none of which have done anything to change the vote count in terms of President-elect Biden winning the election, but there are still legal challenges until they run out. President Trump has said that he does not plan to concede. This is not something new. For those of you that remember, Al Gore didn't concede until December during that election. But obviously, we expect there will come a point in time that President Trump will concede and President-elect Biden will be able to more freely move forward with the establishment of his administration. U.S. House, things are still the same there. The Democrats did maintain control, so nothing has really changed in terms of leadership there. As I said, they're doing leadership elections, but not much change there. In the U.S. Senate, we are in a bit of limbo right now. There are going to be 2 runoff races in Georgia, and that is going to decide who has control of the U.S. Senate. And those runoffs aren't going to be held until January. So right now, we are in a bit of limbo. Obviously, it is still in Republican control right now because those who were elected in the election don't take office until next year. But in January, if both of those Georgia seats flip, it would be 50-50 in the Senate, and then the vice president would be the tiebreaker, which would give the Democrats control of all three chambers. Political pundits, I don't know how much we believe them anymore, but I'm going to try and believe them because I want this to be true. They believe that Republicans will maintain control of the Senate. And as I have told you all many times in the past, I personally like a balance of power. So I think you only have good legislation and good government if you don't have one party in control of everything. So the hope is that the Senate will maintain Republican control, and that will act as a balance to, I think, some of the policies that might be coming out of the Biden administration, at least from the beginning. Not a lot on federal, so let's go to state. So we've had some action at the state level. Last week, I went over the House Republican leadership elections, pretty anticlimactic, as I had mentioned at the time, when the House Republicans pick up 3 seats in an election that they thought the chamber would flip. You don't mess with your leadership structure, and they didn't. But we did have Senate Republican leadership elections last week, which turned out to be a little exciting. Unsurprisingly, Jake Corman, who was the majority leader, has moved up into the Senate President Pro Tem position. He's replacing Senator Joe Scarnati, who is retiring. And then on a personal, like, I'm so excited front, Senator Kim Ward won majority leader in the Senate. So she's actually the first female majority leader in the history of the Pennsylvania Senate. Outside of that, not much changed. Senator Pat Brown, Senator Gordner, Senator Mensch all maintained their positions within that. Also, House Democrats held their leadership elections, some change up there. Representative Frank Dermody, who was the minority leader, lost his reelection. So we have Representative Joanna McClinton from Philadelphia took over in that post. So some new leadership within the House and the Senate. And I do see a question, why are we talking politics? I think it's important that we continue to talk about our legislative priorities and how the basis of government will help the industry get through it. So we're not picking sides here and there, but I do think that it's important that you all kind of know the state of play in Harrisburg. To that end, Senate Democrats have not had their leadership elections yet. There is that one race out west I mentioned last week that's still in limbo in terms of if Senator Brewster will maintain his seat or if he will lose. So we're still waiting on that. And this is all going to frame up what our legislature looks like for 2021. They are in session this week. This is important to all of us, all of you. They're working on a budget right now, balancing the state budget. The governor is asking for a $35 billion budget. They were looking at a $2 billion debt or $5 billion deficit, which has now been reduced to $2 billion. So not as bad as it was. But one of the items that is going to be a key focus at the rally today is that some of the leaders in Harrisburg are looking at that $1.3 billion in CARES money, and as opposed to giving it to our struggling industry, using it for salaries for the state police, using it for emergency responders, all very valid uses, but they are trying to use it in a way to balance the budget, which of course would mean that it wouldn't be going to our industry at a time that I think we all could use it. So that is going to be a big focus from our speakers at the rally today, and we'll be asking those legislators that are at the rally today to support using those dollars to help the industry get through the coming months, especially if we do not have a federal package until next year. So that's why we moved all the rallies to Harrisburg, because they are in session, and there's a lot of value in all of us coming together and having a united front, especially since they are in the Capitol passing legislation that will impact our industry. Speaking of the rally, it is today at 2 p.m. on the Capitol steps. You must have a mask. There is no exception to that rule, and social distancing will be required. The purpose of this is to show that we are an industry that is safe. We've been playing by the rules. We are not the cause of these increasing cases, and we should not be the target of mitigation efforts. And further, we are an industry that needs financial support no matter what, because we have been more impacted than anybody else. And I think that's important, that while we did not get a shutdown order from Secretary Levine yesterday, they are telling people to stay home. They're telling them not to go out. They're telling them not to travel. And that's impacting our industry just as much, or maybe not as much, but a lot of ways in terms of impacting our operations and day-to-day operations. So that is the focus. We have a ton of great speakers. Majority Leader in the Senate, Kim Ward, is going to be speaking today. Senator Stefano, Chairman of the Law and Justice Committee. We have about 8 legislative speakers, and we've invited the entire legislature, if they're in the Capitol, to come out and support the industry. But like I said, it is going to be important that everybody's respectful, you're safe, and there will be no exceptions in terms of masks. So if you are planning to attend, please bring a mask. We do have some extras if you need it, but this is our opportunity to show that we are safe, and that we can protest safely as well, unlike I think some other protests that we've seen happening out there. And that's really the focus of today, and to continue to put that pressure on the legislature to take steps to help our industry. So please, if you're coming, I can't wait to see you. I'm excited to see people today. And the rally is at 2 o'clock. There is an email that's going out that says the rally is at 1. That was just to ensure that people would get there by 2, because sometimes people see 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock and they arrive at 2:15. But the rally does begin promptly at 2 p.m. today, and it will be live streamed. The Senate Republicans are going to be live streaming the rally. We just found out, and I'm not sure if Steph is on the call, but we will be putting it on social media, and we can put a link in the chat today. So if you aren't able to attend, you can live stream the rally as well. Just you ask and you shall receive. Thank you, Steph. So very excited to see everybody this afternoon. Let's get to the reason everybody's on the call today, shall we? Good timing. So case counts are terrible, not just in Pennsylvania, across the entire country. And this was expected. I can tell you, I don't think we were expecting case counts to be as high as they are. We are now regularly over 5,000 cases a day. And 2 months ago, I was flinching if we were over 1,000. So this resurgence is happening. It was expected to happen. This resurgence is happening 2 weeks after Halloween, almost 2 weeks after the election. So these are all things that I think were anticipated, but not nearly as bad as it has become. Cases are higher than they were in the spring. Hospitals are expected to be more strained than they were, and we expect to have more deaths than we had. So this is not something to joke around about, and this is something that, as you all know, we've been waiting day by day and fearful that we would be the target of mitigation, and so far that hasn't happened. But there was an announcement yesterday on a few fronts from Secretary Levine. Some of them impact us a little bit, some of them don't impact us at all. One is the healthcare system. That doesn't really impact us unless I have any hospitals on the line. But the secretary is telling hospitals that they need to start thinking about how they can assist one another. If one hospital is overwhelmed, how other hospitals can step in, and also look at moving, elective surgeries, things like that. So she's urging hospitals to really start thinking about how this increase in cases is going to impact their operations. Second, the one that has been all of the questions from my hotels, which I will answer right now, is the traveler testing requirement. The order does say that if you are traveling to Pennsylvania from another state, you need to be tested within your state that you are coming from 72 hours or less before you come into Pennsylvania. If you don't get tested, you need to quarantine for 14 days. Same thing for Pennsylvanians that go to another state and come back. Pennsylvanians need to be tested within 3 days. The question that everybody is asking is, do hotels need to ask people for their test results? Do they need to say, where is your COVID test? No. And this is why the order is a little confusing, because it's really, again, relating to personal responsibility. There is no expectation from the administration for businesses, hotels, attractions to check where somebody lives, where they're coming from, and demand that they prove they've taken a COVID test. To be safe and responsible, and we talked about this during the shutdown in the spring, it would be advisable for you to maybe put up a notice at check-in so your guests know that this is an order from our Secretary of Health, so they are aware of it, but you are not being tasked with the enforcement of the testing order. So we have clarified that. I've asked them to update the FAQ to reflect that. I believe they're going to. The FAQ touches upon it in a few different ways in terms of saying businesses are not required to enforce this, but we did ask for more confirmation in terms of anything that our lodging facilities have to do, but you are not required to demand those results from guests as they check into your hotel. The other piece of the strength of the order is the strengthened masking requirement. The only big change for all of us, which wasn't really enforced or done before, is for our restaurants and dining facilities. People need to keep their mask on until their food and beverage is served. So currently, when you go to a restaurant, once you sit at your table, you can take your mask off. The new guidance does require your mask to stay on until you have your food or drink in front of you. You are not required to only go out with people in your household. Philadelphia is a different story. We'll get there. But you will have to keep your mask on if you are dining somewhere until your food and beverage is served. And that's really the only change to how the masking order is in place right now. Some other questions we've gotten is, I mean, the order does say, and this is really just so you know, this is about Thanksgiving. This is about people getting together with their extended family, and they want to make sure everybody's wearing masks at all times because people are going to come together from different households, whether they were planning to wear masks or not. So that's really kind of the basis of the order. Other pieces, of course, indoors, you have to wear a mask at all times, even if you're more than 6 feet apart from people. For those of you that are working in your office, you do not have to have a mask if you can isolate from other people. So if you have an office where you know you're going to be separate from other people, but if there's any chance of interaction with anybody, you need to have your mask on during all of that time. So that is really, and again, there is no change to the exemption of if somebody has a health issue. You cannot ask them to provide proof of a health issue, any of that. So none of that's changed. The only thing that has really changed is that you need to make sure that people are wearing their masks until their food and beverage is served. And then colleges and universities also doesn't really impact all of you on this call, but there is a requirement. Of course, all of the college students are coming home for Thanksgiving, and there is a requirement that colleges, if they bring students back, which less and less are, that they have a robust testing requirement and plan in place for students that are returning after the holidays. Future announcements. We're not in the clear. I think we all know this. Every day another state either shuts down indoor dining completely or reduces it. Yesterday, Delaware reduced it to 30%. I think that we should be thrilled as of right now that there seems to be an acknowledgement from the governor's office and the Secretary of Health that we are already mitigated, and quite frankly, we aren't the problem. I don't know if that's going to continue. I'm going to cross my fingers and hope it does. But there is a concern as more and more states around us start shutting down their indoor dining. As I said, we never want to be the first to do anything, but we're certainly happy to follow the lead. So I think we need to be worried about that. And part of, like we said, our talking points around this is, one, we are not the problem. There's no data showing that we are. And two, when we had the shutdown in the spring, we had the PPP. From the federal government. Our employees had that unemployment assistance. None of that is the case right now. That's something that if they do a shutdown is not available to us. So while we might have been able to kind of try and muddle through the shutdown in the spring, we certainly can't muddle through one right now without financial assistance. So that is one of the key points that we're touching upon. So for PRLA next steps, we are looking at, and I think it was in the update yesterday, if we do not want to be shut down or mitigated as an industry, we need the general population of this Commonwealth to do their part. We need them to wear masks. We need them to be responsible. We need them to follow the rules, because if they all get together on Thanksgiving and they all take off their masks and everybody gets COVID, guess who they're going to shut down? Us. So we're going to be working on a PR campaign similar to what we did with the mask, similar of wear your mask to save our industry, because if cases do increase, we are going to be the ones punished for it. So it's really going to be important that we inform people that them being responsible and wearing their masks now is what's going to help us stay open and get through the winter. So that's a campaign that we'll be working on going into Thanksgiving next week. Let's talk about Philadelphia. I don't know. I don't know what to tell you guys about Philadelphia. It's terrible. I have so many printouts here. So on Monday, the Philadelphia Department of Health, Maria, hello from Philly. I'm sorry, Maria. Basically announced that cases are increasing in the city of Philadelphia, which we know, and Donnie, cases are increasing. As I mentioned, hospitals are starting to get overwhelmed in Philadelphia, and deaths are increasing. Commissioner Farley looked at what Europe did. And while there's no data showing that our restaurants, our events are the cause of the problem in Philadelphia, looked at what Europe did, said it seems to be working, so copied and pasted those restrictions to Philadelphia. And so in Philadelphia, beginning on November 20th for 6 weeks, I don't know why it's 6 weeks, I don't know why it can't be 4 or 3 or 2, but it's 6. There can be no indoor dining within the city of Philadelphia. There can be no indoor events whatsoever within the city of Philadelphia. There can be outside events, but there can't be any food or beverage. Their outdoor dining is permitted in Philadelphia. There can only be 4 people at a table, and they must be within the same household. Yes, it's completely unenforceable. Really, the intent is that the public is aware of it and they don't go out unless it's with 3 other people in their household. So for my restaurants in Philly, you are not going to be required to ask people for their driver's license to make sure their address is all the same. But it is to encourage people not congregating with other households. Casinos are closed. Any type of bowling alley, game spaces, gyms are all closed. And this was not, just so you know, this was not a conversation that the administration had with the administrator or with PRLA. It was not where they sat down and said, cases are increasing, what should we do? It was them saying, cases are increasing, this is what we're doing. At the time, I asked specifically, what are you going to do? As I mentioned before, there is no PPP available. There is no unemployment assistance. You're going to be laying off employees during the holiday season through no fault of their own and no fault of your own, and asked them what they were going to do. And they said, well, we're struggling financially too. We need the state and the feds to step in. And they went as far as to say that if businesses close, that's too bad. So I think it's just a really frustrating time within the city. There is a letter that went out from a group of restaurants, the Save Philly Restaurants Group, which PRLA is a part of. We are already having conversations with City Council about recovery efforts and things we can do financially for the industry. I wish I had better news right now, because I know a lot of you are really looking at the numbers and wondering, can you survive with takeout for 6 weeks? Or does it make sense to just close your doors and try and get through the winter? And that's not a decision I think anybody should have to make right now, but unfortunately, it seems to be a decision that the city of Philadelphia is requiring you to consider. So we do, like I said, the restrictions are pretty straightforward. We might have some questions that I can answer or clarifications that we need, but when they shut you down completely, there's not a lot of gray area there for all of that. So unfortunately, that's what's happening in Philadelphia. I can tell you what we're hearing in Allegheny County. Is that they're going to continue to follow the state. I don't know if that's going to change. The state would like local governments to kind of take control of their own mitigation. I think local governments doesn't want to be the one that shuts people down. So I think that's where we're going to have some back and forth between the state and our local governments. But Philadelphia, unfortunately, is going to do that shutdown effective Friday, going to January 1. And for our state mitigation, for the masking requirements, the travel advisory, that is also effective on Friday at midnight. And there is no end date. It's until the order is lifted. So there is no end date for the other restrictions that the Secretary Levine announced yesterday. And with that, I think we can go to future webinars, and I'll try and work through some questions.
Sure, thank you, Melissa. This will be quick, just because there's only a few coming up, but tomorrow we will have a webinar with Focus HRO. They're going to be talking about employee handbooks, policies, why you need to have them, how to avoid lawsuits and claims, and things that you should be doing to protect yourself, with everything coming up. The RSI will be doing a P&L webinar also tomorrow, and this is breaking down your P&L, like what to do, the best practices, things to look at your P&L, and how to get your employees involved with looking at the P&L. And Melissa will be back next Wednesday. We will be doing a webinar the Wednesday before Thanksgiving, so please join us next week. And then on the next slide is just a reminder about classes and training that is available. Also, the dining commitment and the PA promise, these are great opportunities for you to have additional signage in your establishment showing your commitment to the safety of your organization and for your employees and for the customers coming in. And as always, if you wanted to be involved with virtual experiences for our students, please reach out to myself. I'm at hsterner@prla.org. And with that, I'm going to pass it back over to you for questions, because that's really why they're here.
Thanks, Hope. First question from Bob. Do international travelers have to be tested before boarding a plane destined for the USA? We won't get into politics. I mean, I think there is some frustration because at the federal level, there is not a lot of universal standards in place. For Pennsylvania, people are going to be informed when they get off the plane that they should have gotten tested. But Secretary Levine said that there will not be that enforcement. There will not be somebody checking when people get off the plane to make sure they have their test results with them. So this really is an effort for people to do the right thing, to know that they should be doing this. And there can be enforcement for some of these items. Local police, just like everything else, can enforce. The department can enforce. But the intent is not to do that kind of that large check, but making sure people are informed. So they will not be put back on the plane and sent back to their country of origin if they don't have a test. And then Sue shared a link for something from Maine for self-certification. Since they shut us down the day before St. Patty's Day, what do you think about next Wednesday? This is actually an interesting question, because I talked about this with about 3 people yesterday. I don't think that they would do that, to be quite honest. And PRLA is going to tell you to follow the rules no matter what. But if they try and shut everybody down before, like, make an announcement on Tuesday that you need to shut down by Wednesday, I think there's going to be a lot more non-compliance than there was for St. Patrick's Day. I think that there will be more LCE agents out. But if I were them, if I were going to shut down indoor dining, I wouldn't do it at a time that you're going to impact this industry so much that a lot of people just say, I have to survive. PRLA has made that clear. We don't think there should be a shutdown at all. But our hope is that all of you are not having bar seating. People that are coming in are sitting and having a meal and not congregating. And that will be shown that doing a shutdown before Wednesday, the biggest party night of the year, doesn't make a lot of sense since we're all following the rules. That is my hope and prayer. But like I said, if we see Jersey or New York start doing full shutdowns, I'm gonna get a little bit more nervous. So does this mean that when they get their water riches immediately, they can remove their masks? According to the guidelines, because you know I highlight everything, it's when they do not have food or drink in front of them. So, of course, it's on the one page I didn't pull up. So yes, once they get their food and drink or their glass of water, they can remove their mask because they now have food or drink in front of them. Following up to the mask wearing until served, is there any requirement that once a table is cleared of dishes, glasses, that diners must put masks back on while they're seated at the table? Yes. If there is no food or drink in front of them that they are consuming, then they need to have their mask back on, even seated at their table. So before, as we said, when they sit at their table, they can have their mask off. It's a step further. If they're sitting at their table and their drinks have been cleared, everything's been cleared, you're at the end of the wedding and people are getting tired and they're sitting at their tables, they need to have their masks on. Philly is tough. I got to give Philadelphia. So you guys, you make me so proud because it drives me. It's crazy what they're doing, and you guys just keep on fighting. God bless you. Stephen in Philly is trying to sell his bars. Stephen, don't sell your bars. Yeah, and that's another thing. Maria has a few comments there. I mean, you can still do outside seating in Philadelphia, and getting creative with it. And we did pass legislation in Philadelphia that extends that until the end of next year, December 31st of 2021. So you're making those investments, you will be able to continue them through 2021 and hopefully even further if we have our druthers. I see the city's health department put forth restaurant guidelines for outdoor dining on 11/16. Do you expect more guidance or other restrictions or an official order that we should be waiting on? Or is that outdoor restaurant guidance all we need to be relying on? I literally today got a text message that the order is out in Philadelphia, the official order. That usually the orders don't have all of the details. It just lists what it is and the official, we can enforce it language that they need. But I don't know if there's going to be more guidance. Like I said, they're pretty straightforward, but if there are specific questions that you can't get through the guidance and the orders that have come out so far, please let us know. So there's a question from Donnie. The date has been set in Philly. Friday, however, has the time of the new restrictions. It's going to be midnight. So it's Friday at 12:01 is when it's going to take effect. So, and they did tell us that the last dinner service is going to be Thursday dinner service for restaurants and for indoor dining in Philadelphia. Yes, definitely. We're going to stay safe and warm. It's going to be a little brisk out there today. So, and we'll miss all of you that aren't with us today. Speaking of lawsuits, have we heard of anyone trying to sue a business for getting COVID yet? I'm sure there are lawyers out there gearing up for those. I have not heard, but yes, I mean, that's why liability protection is really a top priority for us right now going into the new session and at the federal level as well, is to provide you that liability protection. As I said, there's trial lawyers. We would be in denial if we didn't acknowledge that they are looking at this as an opportunity to file some lawsuits. So I have not heard of anything. I don't know, John, if you have, but I think it's something that we should be prepared for without liability protection, which is why that is going to be such a priority of ours in the coming months.
I have not. It's a huge priority, and I think it's just a matter of time, as you say, Melissa.
And so for Michael Leifer, thank you. And we understand, I mean, a lot of you can't join us because you're operating on small staff, but I know the people that are coming are going to be loud and passionate and will certainly represent all of you very well today. Okay, let's see. We have been visited 3 times by the state police COVID enforcement that we are aware of. We are now denying medical mask excuses. The police came in and gave us a written warning about undercover officers seeing someone leave their table and go to the restrooms 2 weeks prior. I am fearful of getting fined for allowing a medical excuse because how would an undercover officer know? Have you heard of other people also denying the medical excuse? Yes, we have. And what in that scenario, we have had businesses that say, if you can't wear a mask, we'll provide you a shield. And if they will not wear a shield, we have had businesses say, we will be more than happy to bring your order out to you as a takeout option. So we have been hearing that in some places. Like I said, the problem is that if somebody has an actual medical issue, they're probably going to be more responsive and understanding of why you can't let them in for the COVID fears. If they're saying they have a medical excuse, but they don't, they're probably going to be the ones that give you a hard time. And we certainly want you to be safe. We do have de-escalation webinars that we've done, but I have begun to hear more and more that businesses are saying, if you have a medical issue, we are happy to accommodate you in any way via takeout by bringing your order out to you. So we are hearing that a little bit more. Let's see. Stephen, I know you're gonna stick with it. I have full faith in you. And then a thank you. Okay, let's see. Will you please review guidelines for temporary outdoor enclosures for the colder weather? Example, tent, one side closed, two sides, three sides. So for the state guidance, and I think it's Philadelphia's too, but I don't want to speak out of turn. You cannot have, if you have more than two sides open, you have to have at least two sides open, or you should have two sides open for it to be enclosed. Not that you have to, but you should. You cannot have a fully enclosed tent. So under the current guidance, you could potentially have one side open, and then as long as it's open and you leave it open, that could be acceptable, but you cannot have a fully enclosed tent. And that's, like I said, the guidance reads weird. It says you should, not you have to. So you should have two sides open, not that you have to. So if you want to be safe, you should have two. I think to check the box, you could probably get away with one. And that is in the mitigation document from the Department of Health. Regarding Andy's comment, I thought there was no medical excuse exemption. Correct. You can't say I can't wear one because I have a medical excuse. No, they made it really clear in the guidance that medical excuses are still permissible. So that's still allowed. They are protected under the ADA if they cannot wear a mask. But you need to accommodate them, but you can't just deny them service at all because of that. And let's see, here we go. Can a business deny entry to a customer who's not wearing a face covering? Yes, if a customer is not wearing a face covering, a business should deny entry. However, that business must offer a reasonable accommodation for the customer to purchase goods. Federal and state and federal law, including the Americans with Disabilities Act, may also create obligations for businesses or employers. And you should talk to your lawyer for advice because they never give legal advice. So you do have the opportunity to say, like I said, we will bring your food out to you. You can't say I'm not serving you at all because you don't have a mask. I think we're nearing the end.
Looks like we are.
Okay.
Melissa, thank you very
I
much.
look forward to seeing you guys at noon or 2 p.m. today.
Great job as also, Melissa. Thank you very much as always. I just want to make a quick comment, particularly on the question about timing of further announcements, as in if there's an announcement, when would it take place? There's no question that when the July 15 order came down, in addition to many other things, we and many of you and many others focused on the fact that it was about 8.5 hours of notice. And I think that was not lost on the administration. Philadelphia, to their credit, gave almost a week's notice to what's happening this week. And we've also pointed that out. Earlier this week, Brandon from the historic Glenrock Mill Inn wrote us, and about timing, a very well written message. And if there is any mitigation, there should be plenty of time given. We passed that along and received an acknowledgement from the governor's chief of staff about that. So I think you're going to find that, and I hope we're right about this, that they recognize that there's got to be, if there's any further mitigation, there's got to be adequate notice so that you can take care of your employees. We don't have a lot of wasted food and things like that. We'll keep beating that drum. And then secondly, I'd like to say that while we're all struggling right now, and in particular the restaurant industry, we are gratified that the Secretary of Health is focusing on personal responsibility. And when asked about further restaurant mitigation in her press conference yesterday, she stated there already is mitigation on restaurants and they don't anticipate any at this time. And someone pointed out to me that the phrase "at this time" has a short shelf life. So just be careful. We'll do our best, and Melissa's phenomenal at getting word out right away and trying to read the tea leaves, but none of us are really soothsayers, though we try to be. So with that, thanks again for being with us today. And with that, I'll turn it back to Hope to close us out.
Great, thank you, John. There was one more question, Melissa. I don't know if you want to look at it from Andy about face masks.
Oh, sorry. We offer a mask to everyone who doesn't have one and a face shield to those who say they have a medical excuse. If they still won't, we deny entry as a private business. Is that okay to do? If you have a restaurant and they say they have a medical condition protected under ADA, you do need, like I say, to try and accommodate them. You can't say we are not going to serve you. So you do need to try and accommodate them, because then you might have some ADA issues. But outside of that, that is permissible to say you will not allow entry.
So the
All
way
right.
that you're suggesting they serve them is to provide them food to go or something like that, Melissa, correct?
Correct.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, great. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. And as always, we have recorded this and we'll send it out to you later in the day or possibly tomorrow. Because of the rally, we may be a little delayed, but it will be up on our website. And as always, please reach out to us with any questions you may have. And I hope to see all of you at the rally today. Everybody stay safe.